everyone, welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today I'll be talking about how to draw a sheep. As usual, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, so here's the sheep. So we're going to get started. Sheep, it's going to be all one color, white, minus the eyes, which will be brown. So that makes it a little easier. It won't be, shifting back and forth between the colors. So I'm going to get the whole sheep done in shadow, and what I mean by that is, if you've watched my videos before, I don't put full pin pressure. It's just this sort of light pin pressure here, and kind of fully filling it in. But the more pin pressure you put, or the more lines, will both brighten it up, right? So this is full pin pressure, you can see the difference, or more lines will do the same thing. So I'm going to do all of this in shadow, in the white, and I will be right back. Alright, I'm going to talk really briefly, because I didn't talk about it while I was doing it, about how I did the longer fur, right? So to do that, you just kind of like squiggle the brush lightly, right? So I'm not putting a lot of pin pressure, and I'm just kind of making, squiggles and circles, and I'm stringing them all together as one like long brush stroke. And then, as I got to like the edges where things were coming out, I would just sort of squiggle out and then go back to a bigger area. So it's pretty easy to do. You just kind of have to keep your hand, light and loose, and, and then, just sort of squiggle it, because highlight and shadow will be what really dictate how this looks. But their wool here gets thick and long and curly, so just filling in a gap, so we can easily mimic that with doing that, drawing it that way. Now to add highlights, since technically it's already shadowed. The only thing that will have color outside of the eyes is the nose. It'll be like a gray. Some sheep would have pink, but we're not going to do it. It's pink. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the layers, because I am going to later add sunglasses. So when I'm doing that, understanding that well, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so now we're gonna add highlights, right? So that's relatively easy. We're just gonna stay within the little, like, I never know what to call it, clumps of fur. And I've already kind of sketched out the shadows, right? That's what this is. So I have the light source coming from above and to the right. And you know, like always, it's above and in front of. Although the more extreme the angle, the more it hits the sheep differently, right? So the shadows and highlights would be different. So, you know, it's just a matter of staying within the confines of these and adding both more lines and more pin pressure. This will give it a pretty, you know, detailed look. You can see how it's already doing. Now, of course, this is just in the highlighted section. But as we move towards shadow, right, so if I come over here, right, we have some highlighting here. I have highlighting here, and then highlighting here, but that goes into shadow there, so I'm just going to lighten up my pin pressure, and then it goes back into highlight. I usually always have highlight under the eyes, because it's one of the first things we look at, right? So I have blast here that's going into shadow, goes into shadow up here. So to make that happen, I kind of back off my pin pressure a bit. All right, so if I take that off, you can kind of see how it's doing. So I'll still add some lines to blend it, right? Add some lines and then brighten it up and really, you know, put more pressure and more lines in. But, you know, right where it's connecting, I sort of just lessen the pin pressure off, but still kind of fill in a bit, right? So I'm going to get the highlights all done. And, well, I'll get the highlights on just this section of the face and talk about the highlighting up here, since it'll be, again, the sort of squiggles and stuff. So I'll get it on just the face, and I will be right back. All right, so now for the fluff. So that's gonna be here, right? So, not gonna quite, you know, like, it's easy to fill it in this way, but it can be really easy to go overboard once you start, like, adding highlights to it. So I'm gonna be a little bit more careful and do individual strokes to fill in highlight here. Kind of matching the lines I've already done. So if I'm squiggling, you know, allow it to sort of squiggle. If I swoop it down, or if a section just kind of looks a little bit more swooped, then I'm going to do that. And that's kind of how it'll look there. Still somewhat squiggly. It's just, instead of that long, you know, hold on, you know, this was all kind of one stroke, or a lot of it was. I'm going to be more individually careful about what I'm doing and what I'm lining up as far as my lines go here. So it is still pretty straightforward, because I am just still squiggling a bit. I'm just matching to what I've done underneath, and as you can see, it's going pretty quick. So I'm going to get all of this done, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of blend it a little better, but otherwise I think that's pretty good. So by blending it, what I'm doing is I'm just taking light pen pressure and filling in on these gaps. Nothing big. You know, it's very, very, very light. I'm just trying to like taper off how harsh the transition from highlight to shadow is. But still kind of keeping that, you know, fluffy kind of look to it. We need the ears. Again, pretty straightforward with the ears. It's you know, they're white and in theory shorter hair, but I still added the separations that I did throughout the body, right? The hair clumps or whatever. I have that fading pretty quickly into shadow and doing light pen pressure to kind of blend it. Right, so now we have the nose, which is gray. Could be pink, you know, but we're doing it as gray. So I'm not adding in the fluff here. I am just filling it straight in. So just like before, I'm doing this in shadow. It's not hard to do, it's just that light pen pressure. It's even easier and quicker because I'm not having to separate it into hair clumps. And then in just a second, we'll be adding highlights. Right, okay, so there's the nose. Now we are going to do some highlights. I'm going to have it going into shadow as it kind of comes down. Now because this is so black and white, this is going to look amazing when we add a burst of color to it. Because even with the gray of the nose, it is still extraordinarily black and white. And the eyes are kind of the same way. Adding the eyes are still going to be pretty black and white looking. Eyes brown, typically with a sheep. So we're going to have the pupils, draw those in, and then sketch around the edge. I did do this on a different layer, right? Yeah. Sometimes I draw on something pre-existing, and like if I wanted to, not the end of the world if I draw this on the nose, but ideally I would not. And try to make sure both pupils kind of match each other. I think that's pretty close actually. But I am still going to take the elliptical Maki tool and I'm going to select it, right? Just slide it in and then make it smaller than what I just did because I feel like that's a little overzealous. Okay, slide it in, hit the backspace to clean up the edge and then inverse it. I'm going to draw along the edge of the pupil because what we just did was select everything but the pupil so that I can draw inside that space. Going to select inverse it again so that I can reselect the elliptical Maki tool and drag the selection over. This is a way to make sure the pupil is kind of nice and clean, which I actually think it was. So once again, hit the back button on the keyboard, backspace will erase, select inverse, and do what we did on the other side where we fill in along the pupil, and I'm not drawing in the same direction, so now I'm drawing in a different direction. It's the only way to ensure I can fill in with this style, and eyes are so important. We're going to deselect that. You can see the pupil is nice and clean. So now light source coming from above and to the right. And add a little burst of highlight against the pupil, the opposite side of the light source. and then fill in along the light source. So this side's pretty straightforward and easy. I'm just gonna go. The edges would go back into shadow, right? So the edge of the pupil, sorry, edge of the iris goes back in shadow. And then obviously it's going shadow up in here. That's why there's that gap. And then just sort of fully brightening that up. Over here, technically same idea, but you have more in the way. And then this back side is going into shadow. It's a little much less room to work with, right? So under here should be brighter. All right, there we go. Now for a light flare, once again selecting the same white color. And I'm just gonna do something better than that. I don't know what that was. A slightly rounded line with a dot at the end, and then I'm gonna add in a little bit of a flare above, right? And then on this side, we're actually gonna do the same thing, which technically is backwards, but it will work. I'm gonna do it much lighter though. So just a very light line, and then the same thing with that strip of light above. Just very light line. A little lighter than what I just did. And I'm actually going to take it and drag it just a smidge. We are going to choose something in the warm color, so like orange, yellow, something like that. I think this orange probably actually works. We'll keep it there. And what we're going to do is add a burst of highlight in the sort of in the most extreme areas, right? So this will add a nice bit of color. Now I'm not doing it everywhere, and being mindful of my light source, right? It's coming from above and to the right, so I'm not going to fill in over here. I'm basically adding it where the most extreme highlight would be. And then always by the eye, typically. Along the forehead, and splaying that out, because the foreheads catch light a little better than most things. Doing it on the ear as well. And on the other side. And then into this as well. Again, only in the areas that would have the most highlight. Now, we're going to take blue, just kind of a light, bright blue. In fact, we'll just keep the same color tone, and put it in all the areas that are shadowed, right? So all of this space, I'm going to lightly draw blue over it. Light pin pressure. It's very easy to go overboard with blue, but it is our shadow. So I'm going to fill in all of the areas of shadow with this, including all of this, right? So I'll be in here doing this fluffiness with blue, and I will be right back. Now I'm also going to add some blue in the gaps, very lightly still. In the gaps between the fur a little bit, not everywhere, only in the really big ones. Still light pin pressure. Alright, so then the last thing I'm going to do is take a few of the blue and brighten it up. So it's just kind of, it's definitely a play it by ears to how it looks, right? But I'm gonna just take some of these and brighten them. You just sort of spread it out, but you don't want like one big clump together. You can have a couple near each other though. And then same up in here, right? Brighten up some of the areas that I've squiggled. And not by much and not all over. Just sort of picking and choosing what and where. There's our sheep. Alright, so that's how you draw sheep. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.